What's up, nerds? I wouldn't really call myself a sign maker per se, but the retro signage that I make is probably one of the things that I am most known for. And a lot of it is aged and weathered to give it a vintage appearance. And a lot of you have asked me how I accomplish this. So I thought it was about time that I show you some of the basic techniques that I use to weather stuff. So we're gonna need something to weather. This is a scaled down version of the ubiquitous roadside reader board, usually seen on the side of a state highway pointing at a liquor store or a car wash or a sketchy massage place. I've made it entirely out of aluminum. A lot of signage is made out of aluminum because it's lightweight. I've also got a video on working with aluminum, if you'd like to check that out, link below. It's not as hard as you think. Now, the first thing I do when starting a paint job is to add a coat or two of primer. I use Zinsser Bullseye 123 for just about everything because it sticks to just about everything. Comes in gallons, quarts, and rattle cans. For this, I'm going to use a rattle can because it's easiest. The primer helps everything after it to stick and gives me a nice clean canvas to start with. It also creates contrast for what is going to be my next step, which is adding what I call black dirt, which is simply watered down black water-based paint. More accurately, tap water with a little bit of black paint in it. Usually 1 to a half of one of these little syringes, which is about 5 to 10 milliliters per, what is this, about 14 ounces of water, just depending on how dark I want it to be. And all I do is I spray it on here and I dab it with a paper towel. And I missed a rivet. That happens a lot more than you might think. Now, I do not want this too evenly covered. I want it not really splotchy, but I do want light areas and dark areas. I want it kind of high contrast because this is an undercoat. It needs to show through my main coat of paint. Doesn't work with all paints, but it will typically work with red paints because most red paints are semi-transparent. You got to put on 2 or 3 coats to get good solid coverage. But with one coat, this should show through, making it look fundamentally dirty. Next up, I want to rust this guy. I want to make it look like it's been sitting by the roadside a little too long. And well, like I said, this is made of aluminum. And another reason a lot of signs are made of aluminum is aluminum doesn't rust. Well, it does rust, but it's more of a white oxidation. It doesn't rust in the way that you think of rust. So I'm going to be using this stuff. This stuff is Modern Masters Metal Effects Oxidizing Iron Paint. I've been using this for years. This is the same stuff that I used on the Welcome All Makers sign at Jimmy DiResta's place, as well as a sign you may remember from back in 2017, whose name I cannot say because one of the words got my original video demonetized. Now, it can be a little tricky to apply because it's kind of thick, so it just kind of wants to move around on you. You can get larger containers than this. I'll link to it in the video description. When you're deciding where to apply this stuff, think about spots where water might collect, like right in here, or places where the paint is likely to chip, that being a spot where the rust would start to set in. All right, that looks like a good start. And I'm just gonna let that dry. Now, if you're anything at all like me, you've got multiple things all going on at once, projects, deadlines for projects, ideas for new projects, all on ever-growing lists. I've got a stack of notepads, stacks all over the shop. I got a mosaic of Post-it notes, phone apps. I've got phone apps, but I recently had the pleasure of using a far better solution from the sponsor of this project, ClickUp. ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity platform designed to help people like us get organized and stay on top of our goals, whether you're balancing creative projects, running a business, or just trying to keep your life together. ClickUp makes it easy to streamline everything. And their platform is a game changer. I can use their built-in whiteboard to brainstorm ideas, checklists to track supplies and tasks, and calendars to keep my deadlines in check. I am always running right up against video deadlines. And all of it is in one place, so I don't have to waste time jumping between apps or searching through my stacks of notes. And if you collaborate with a team, ClickUp makes it effortless with built-in messaging, progress tracking, and document sharing. Everyone stays on the same page without endless back and forths. Back and forths? How would you say it? Plus, it's not just for work. You can use ClickUp for anything, planning a wedding, organizing a big trip, or just managing daily tasks more efficiently. So if you want to take control of your workflow and stop feeling overwhelmed, give ClickUp a try. Use my link below and enter the code YouTube to start using ClickUp for free. And if you love it as much as I think you will, that same code will get you 20% off when you decide to upgrade. Now, once the first coat of iron paint dried, I applied a second coat, then dabbled it a bit with a chip brush to add a little texture and break up any brush lines. And once that's dry, I sand down the edges so there's not an obvious boundary where the iron paint stops. After the top coat goes on, you can see an abrupt and unnatural change in texture right where that stops, unless we feather it out first. Now, we're almost ready for that top coat, but of course we don't want to paint over the iron paint we just put on, so we have to mask it. And to do that, I just use masking tape. Tear it into pieces, give it a jagged, rough edge, make it look like, that's where the paint has chipped and peeled over time. For larger areas, what I usually do is I'll take some brown paper, like some packing material paper. I'll give that a light coat of spray glue, let that dry a little bit, and then stick it on like a big Post-it. By the way, when you're weathering something like this, it's very easy to go too far. As humans, we look at something, we want to balance it out. So the mistake I see a lot of people make when they weather something is they'll do some weathering here, and they'll do some weathering down here, and they'll see a big gap, and they'll want to kind of fill it in right in the middle, and then over here they'll fill it in, and it ends up looking, it's too even. It looks unnatural. You got to be very careful to make it not look deliberate. What I usually tell people is when you're weathering something, get to a certain point, take a step back, get an overview of it, and if you start to think, maybe just a little bit more right there, stop. Stop yourself. You're about to ruin it. Also, go out and find some old signs or old whatever it is you're trying to weather and study it. Look at the colors. Look at how the paint has worn away. Notice how it's faded. Take pictures of that. Use that as reference. All right, so we are just about ready to add the top coat now. One more thing though, I added this black dirt underneath because I want it to show through, give it some visual texture, make it look a little dirty. But of course, all of this iron paint around here is going to show also. It's going to be very obvious that we painted something on here and then painted over it. We only want this iron paint to show where we pull the mask off. So I've got to go back first and just spray some primer over these edges. Why don't I just make the sign out of steel and rust that naturally? Well, sometimes I do that for certain things, but I want to maintain the lightweight nature of this. I don't know where this is going to hang exactly yet. It's going in a bar. In fact, from what I've been told, they don't even know exactly where it's going to hang yet. Plus, I want to rust it in a controlled way. This is just for effect. It's basically a set piece. Now the real transformation begins. You may have noticed I did not use the paint that I showed earlier. This is a one-off. There's not much surface area, so I didn't want to break out the paint gun and have to clean all of that. So I just used a rattle can. This is Montana Gold paint. It's pretty good stuff. It does not come in a glossy, which is fine because you want a low luster sheen anyway, because glossy does not read as old. A note about these Montana Gold paints, by the way, when you buy a can of this, the first thing you do is you take off this cap and then you throw it in the garbage, because that's what it is. It spatters, it's terrible. They make other caps for this. Again, link in the description. Regardless, like I said before, most red paints are semi-transparent, so you can still make out that dirty underlayer that we added before. The effect can be kind of subtle, but with something like this, it is all about layers. And this is the next layer. This is a white water-based stain. It's actually the base that you would have an employee tint for a custom stain color, but you can buy this right off the shelf. This is a technique I came up with many years ago when I was just experimenting here in the shop with what I had on hand. I was trying to mimic that chalky appearance that paint takes on when it's been outside in the weather for a very long time. You just need a chip brush, a cheap sponge, and a tub of water. You just brush on some stain, making sure to keep it wet. Do not let it dry. And then wipe it off in a downward motion with a wet sponge. It can take a little practice to get it right, but that's basically it. And it really ages the paint, makes it look weather beaten, and highlights some of the edges and details like the rivets. Go easy with it at first, take most of it off, lightens as it dries. You can always go back and add more if you like, and rinse your sponge out between applications. There's an old technique of bleaching wood using lime called liming. Furniture finishers replicate it today using stain like this. They call it lime washing. Even though this isn't wood, that's what I've been calling this, lime washing. I recommend always going in the direction that water would be running off of it. Then I go back and do another layer of black dirt, making sure it collects in all the crevices. And I always make sure I do this with the sign in its natural orientation. That way all the drips run in the logical direction. By the way, the black dirt works on most paint colors, but it looks terrible on yellows for some reason. So I actually have a separate bottle of orange dirt, which is it's like a brownish orange. Looks a lot more natural. Now, an important note, this is a very old can. I've been using this for years. Minwax has long discontinued this specific product. It has been replaced with these. When you're looking for it, make sure it's water-based. Look for the words pure white or tint base. There is also a clear, that's not it. And there are two kinds. This one is solid, this one is semi-transparent. This one is more like paint. This is the one you want. This is still thicker than the old stuff, but it acts pretty much the same way. Now, in a pinch, you could probably use this and just water it down. I think that's what I did with the Welcome All Makers sign. This is not sponsored, by the way. Varathane and other manufacturers probably have something very similar to this. Don't be afraid to experiment. Then once everything is dry, we can remove all the paint masking and the fun begins. We get to make this thing rust. Now, Modern Masters sells their own rust activator. And here's the reason why Modern Masters will probably never sponsor me. This stuff can be expensive. Where I picked this up, this one bottle was almost 30 bucks. Me, I make my own. It's 4 parts hydrogen peroxide, 1 part vinegar, and salt to taste. I can make a whole lot of this for almost nothing. Now all we gotta do is spray a bunch of this on those gray bits and watch the science happen. Okay, so looks like I've got to add a footnote here. I sprayed the sign a few times over a couple of hours and then let it cook overnight like I usually do. And it did rust, but not quite as dramatically as I've been used to. I've been using the same combination for, it's got to be 10 years now. And I did a project with it a couple of months ago and got pretty disappointing results. I had kind of rushed things, so I thought it was something I had done. But I am remembering now that this stuff used to have a pretty distinctive odor to it. It was stinky, and it doesn't stink anymore. So I'm fairly certain that they have changed the formulation of this at some point, and I'm pretty convinced that's why I'm no longer getting the dramatic results that I used to get. Maybe they caught on to my little workaround. I ran a test of my solution against the official activator, and the official activator produces brighter rust. So I may go ahead and add some of this to what I've already done, but I am still convinced that there is a cheaper way to do this. The ingredients listed on here are acidic aqueous solution and copper salts. I don't know what kind of copper salts, copper sulfate maybe. I don't know what the acidic solution could be. If there are any chemists out there who can take an educated guess as to how I could produce an inexpensive home brew solution, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to run some rust experiments. And one of the last things I do is I take some 150 grit, maybe a file to some of the edges and corners, the sticky outy bits that are most susceptible to wear. Again, don't go overboard and don't try to make it look too even. Finally, as a bonus, I'm going to show you guys how I dirty up the face of this thing with some amber shellac. Just a paper towel. And don't be stingy. And that's it. And then I just hit it with some matte clear, which I'm going to do outside. Of course, these techniques are not definitive. There are many ways of accomplishing this sort of thing. If you guys have any weathering secrets you'd like to share, leave them down in the comments. Also, if you'd like to get access to behind-the-scenes stuff, bonus content, you'd like to help out this channel, I've got a Patreon link down in the video description. If you'd like to critique this in person, it's going to be at the new truck yard location in Oklahoma City, which should finally be opening this month. That's also where my giant tornado sculpture will be on display. And if there are any, set decorators who specialize in this sort of thing, who work on the set of, say, Fallout or Silo or The Last of Us, I'd be more than willing to come out, hang out for the day, let you teach me a few things. Not really sure what's in it for you, but I thought I'd put that out there.